Welcome, and thank you for joining us at The Conversation, presented by the New York State Writers Institute at the University at Albany. My name is Paul Grondal, and I'm the director of the Writers Institute. Before I introduce today's guest, Nadina Laspina and James Odato, let me remind you that this and all of our author interviews are posted on the Writers Institute YouTube channel, where they're also archived, so you can watch them at your convenience. You can also find them on our website, nyswritersinstitute.org. And please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you like what you see here today and want to support future programming, you can also make a donation at our website, nyswritersinstitute.org. We'd be very grateful for that. So now, my pleasure to introduce today's guest. Nadina Laspina is a prominent activist in the disability rights movement. Her activism has led to her arrest for civil disobedience on several occasions, and she's also received numerous awards, most recently including her selection as the Grand Marshal of the 5th Annual Disability Pride Parade in New York City in 2019. She's also the author of an acclaimed memoir, Such a Pretty Girl, published in 2019, and we will include a link for you to purchase the book from a local independent bookseller. Her book tells the remarkable life story of her early years with polio and her experience as an object of well-meaning pity in her native Sicily. Her story continues through her adolescence in America, where she spent an extended time in the hospital where she was traumatized and maltreated in a quest to find a cure. She turned that terrible experience into activism, rebellion, writing, and coming to terms with claiming and appreciating her own beauty. Our interviewer today is James Odato, a friend and colleague of mine who teaches journalism at UAlbany and other area colleges. We also both work together at the Albany Times-Union, and Odato is also a staff reporter at 5 daily newspapers, including the Buffalo News, where his investigative series have spurred policy reforms. His work also has been recognized with numerous local, state, and national writing prizes. His biography about disability rights journalist Lucy Gwynn is scheduled to be published in 2021. It's my pleasure to have Nadina and James today on The Conversation. Now I will step aside and let you two begin your discussion. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for the introduction, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Good afternoon, Nadina.
Hello.
It's wonderful to be talking to a notorious scofflaw who has been. You have been arrested some 50 times.
At least I lost count at a certain point. It just didn't make any sense to keep counting.
Nadina, we are introducing you to a number of people who are interested in writing in general, reading in particular, memoir as well. And just imagine that you are in an auditorium with a couple of hundred people who have come out to hear you speak, because that's what the idea was initially when you were invited to be part of this program. Obviously, events have taken place to alter and allow us to have you in this fashion. We are adapting, right?
We're all adapting, yes.
And in your book, you use words many times that pound away certain themes. The word adapt is appropriate in many ways, including an acronym for an organization you're a part of, a disability rights movement organization. But in your book, you use words like happy, like destiny. There are themes in your book. There are some dark themes as well as light themes. But maybe you can talk about how you came about after some 7 decades on the planet to put pen to paper and write about your life. Why did you choose to do this? Why should the world know about Nadina Laspina and what she went through to become a educator and a disability rights leader?
It was not a decision, at least not a conscious decision. I didn't say, well, I'm going to write a memoir. I think it was in '98, I did a keynote at the University of South Connecticut and decided to start by talking about my childhood in Riposto. And I kind of put it like, isn't that where we all start with, whether we are born disabled, become disabled very early in childhood, which was my case. I had polio. I contracted polio when I was 16 months old, or become disabled later in life. This kind of dark place, yes, where you think you're the only one, you feel like there's no hope at all for the future. You have no idea what will happen to you. Everybody tells you you're going to be cured, you need to be cured, and yet you know deep down that's not going to happen. And then I said, kidding around really, because this was in '98. Yeah, I'm writing a memoir. Every other crip is writing a memoir, and so am I. It wasn't true. I had been writing. I loved to write, and I had written different pieces that were autobiographical. At the time, it felt almost like self-indulgence when I found myself writing about my life. Because there was so much to do, you know, there were people that were stuck in nursing homes. They were dying. There were people who couldn't get out of their house because we had so little access, or that they, in worse institutions even, you know, like mental institutions, and so, and I was getting calls in the middle of the night, you know, from people who needed help. And I was also teaching. I had to, you know, pay my bills. So, I mean, to sit there and write about my life, it seemed kind of like, yeah, self-indulgence. That's what I can call it. And then I realized that using my life, I think I realized that as I started teaching courses at the New School, disability studies courses, because I'm Italian, I'm Sicilian actually, that's my identity. And so what I was teaching for many years was Italian.
Yeah.
And then at a certain point, I had this desire to teach disability studies, and usually the people, you know, the field was just then starting. I'm talking. This was in the '90s, and at the New School, the New School for Social Research, now New School University in New York City. I was given the opportunity to create my own courses and teach them. And I found that, you know, I was giving examples I was using my own life to show the ableism, which a new word, then we were just starting to use it, the prejudice and discrimination. And I thought, well, maybe, you know, when I'm writing, it could have a purpose, and maybe it could be useful to others, to disabled people who can identify, you know, with what I went through, and to non-disabled people, you know, to learn about our struggle and recognize their own ableism.
Well, Nadina, you were born in May of 1940.
48. Don't make me.
Pardon me. Boy, that's a big mistake. May of 48. And so in May of 48, you were delivered to a young Sicilian couple in a town called Riposto, right? And it is not too far from Taormina, which is a place many tourists go to. It's not too far from the bigger city of Catania.
In the province of Catania.
That's right. And in 1948, you were a beautiful child. This is what you looked like. This was
There I was about 5 years old already, 4 or 5 years old. Yeah.
Such a pretty girl. Now, maybe you could talk about the title of this book, and the words, the phrase that often is used in the book, the Italian phrase that's often used in the book in reference to
Che bella bambina was always followed by che peccato. What a shame, what a shame. Also in Italian, peccato means sin. And that was the refrain as I was, throughout my childhood, people looking at me with such anguish on their face, saying, che bella bambina, che peccato, tears in their eyes. And my mother, they would make my mother start crying too. And it made me feel awful. I mean, growing up, I couldn't understand. I was, and so the first sentence of the book is, when I was 4 or 5, I wanted to be ugly, because I thought that's why they were so sad, because I was pretty. If I was ugly, then they wouldn't care.
Well, the reason is because somewhere around by 1950, your household was visited by polio, and it was a wave that washed over you and left you behind on the shore a different person, right? In some ways.
I was just starting to walk. At least that's what my mother. I certainly don't remember ever walking. Yes, and my mother, there was this story that she would tell with me sitting on her lap, usually, to the women who sit outside in the sun or in the shade, depending on the season. And she would tell what a beautiful big baby I was, and how healthy and vigorous, and I never was sick. And until that fateful night when crudele poliomelite, cruel poliomyelitis, invaded our happy home. That was like, how there was this, that's the way she told the story. In a way, she was trying to, push away any blame. At one point in the book, I say, that peccato, when they kept saying che peccato, that in Italian it also means sin. And I say, what sin could my mother have committed, or who in the family in the past? What ancestors committed such a sin? That's it's a terrible feeling for a child to feel.
You could almost hear the ladies in your town going by your home, looking at your mother with you in her arms when you were 16 months or 17 months and a little girl.
Oh, yes. And then
you could hear them almost doing a tisk tisk and saying, "Oh, such a pretty girl, such a pretty girl. What a
That's all I
shame."
heard. Yes. Yes.
And
Kid did that.
across the street from you, and the interesting thing is the street you lived on was Liberty Street, right?
I didn't see the irony back then. Yes.
Well, Liberty Street was the name of your street. Your name is La Spina, which
Yes.
means what? The spine
Or the thorn.
or the thorn?
The
I think,
spine, yeah, which is
and you
kind
had,
of appropriate because polio hits the spine.
that's right.
Um,
And the thorn,
the thorn because I was kind of the thorn in my family's life, happiness. Not only the thorn, but also, you know, I heard the words burden. I was such a burden in always with the religious, you know, oppressive religious atmosphere for me. That's how it felt. Che croce was another word that that they used. What a cross! What a cross you have to bear.
that's what I wanted to get at is across the street from your home on Liberty is a church. And it is a church with the adoration, the famous,
The Addolorata, who,
yes,
you know, the grieving, sorrowful woman, Lady of Sorrows, here we say. And I, growing up, I felt that my mother and the Addolorata were one and the same, even because people looked at my mother holding me the same way they looked at the Addolorata holding the dead Christ on her lap. And I say in the book, they even had the same name, Maria. My mother used to, when I turned 5 years old, she started taking me to the camp. There was the church, and there was also a convent there with the nuns, and the nuns ran an elementary school, and that's where I went to school. My mother would carry me and hand me over to the nuns, who would carry me to the classroom or around the convent, and that was my childhood. And one day, one of the nuns was holding me, and she would always say to me, "Offer your suffering to the Lord." That's a very, very Catholic. Offer your suffering to the Lord, my child. And what the hell what does the Lord want my suffering for? And was my first act of rebellion. I really got angry. I actually hit the nun. She was holding me on her chest, and I said, "I want to be happy." And that's where, you know, the word happy, you said, there's certain words that you keep appearing. Happy is one of them. And she told me, "Oh, you poor child, you can never be happy." What a horrible thing to say to a little child. She didn't mean it. She was sure, you know, and she believed it, that, you know, that's it, that people even today still believe that a disabled life cannot be a happy life. They assume that my life is sad, and that there's so much that I don't have and cannot do. They still do today, you know.
and it was Sister Angelica.
Sister Angelica, that was her
Right.
name.
Right? Was that her real name, Angelica?
Angelica. Well, nuns usually, when they become nuns, adopt a different name. I don't know what her real name, but it was Sister Suor Angelica.
Well, I only ask you that is because the name is so perfect. Just like the name of your street and your last name.
I didn't make any of it up. But
I know, you
exactly.
did say that you wrote this memoir as if it was a novel, right? You tried to use ingredients of the novel. And unlike a lot of memoirs, this memoir has some transparency at the beginning of it, the very early stages of it. You write in a brief paragraph before the book saying that this is a representation of my life. It's not, you don't have a photographic memory. You weren't hanging around with a tape recorder when you were with the nuns. You are in some cases conflating a couple of people. And you also indicated you protected the innocent in some cases and changed the names.
I changed the names. I changed the name of the girl in the book who commits suicide. I changed some people's names, unless I could, the people in the movement, I used the real names.
Sure.
And I made sure that they were okay with what I was saying about them. But some were no longer with us, so I couldn't really ask. And especially for the girl I call Audrey, I didn't know if there was any family left that might have recognized known who I was talking about and be hurt by it. So yes, I
wanted to spare some hurt and some feelings.
Of course.
Well, talk to us about how you structured your memoir. Did you use someone else's blueprint, or is this something that just came out of your own experience? Why did you write it the way you did, and how did you write it? What was the game plan?
Like I started saying, I didn't set out to write a memoir. I kept writing, and different pieces, and then at a certain point, I decided, maybe I could try and put it all together. And by that time, by the way, I had like 400 pages. My first editor, I trusted someone to read it. And he told me, you have more characters. Oh, I'm sorry about that. You have more characters here than there are in War and Peace. Because especially for the people in the movement, I didn't want to leave, I didn't want anyone to feel left out, like you noticed that Lucy Gwynn is not mentioned. I don't talk about I talk about the disability rag, but not mouth. But the disability rag came first. So in the 70s, that's what we had. In the 80s and the 80s. So I had to cut. I had to cut so much and then put it together. And that was where all the work went. Trying to make it into a memoir,
Sure.
And some people see it as an autobiography because it starts with my childhood and it's pretty much the present. And I don't want people to think that it is an autobiography because there is so much more to my life. There are different ways of doing a memoir. I mean, often, well, one thing, for one thing, I was always advised not to write it in chronological order. And yet, I felt that I needed to do that. I tried not to. I tried in different ways. At one point I had like one chapter was the past and one chapter was the present, and no, it didn't seem to work. I wanted the reader to see, witness my development, identify with me, and see me change so gradually and painfully, from being this little crippled girl, you know, a victim, to a fighter who decides to fight back, and not just for myself, but joining the movement and fighting for everyone else, and yes, getting arrested over and over again and spending nights in jail, and which, by the way, is not such a pleasant experience, but I felt, and I still do, you know, I feel that it's a way to show how committed you are, and usually you get arrested because you can't get it and get what you want any other way. You mentioned the organization ADAPT. I was with ADAPT. Yes, got arrested many times with ADAPT. Usually we have a set of demands, and when those demands are not met, if those demands are met, we go back to the hotel and have a party. But when they're not, that's when we get arrested. So there's this feeling of, okay, what can I do? There's nothing, they won't hear me. And so I get arrested. And by the way, I've gotten arrested not just for disability rights, but for other causes as well. I've always believed that our struggle and the struggle of all, you know, oppressed people is one and the same. And of course, disability, it's not, anybody can become disabled at any time. And none of us are just disabled, you know. I'm disabled, I'm a woman, I'm a feminist, you know, so many, and of course, you know, and I'm Sicilian, which, by the way, you know, I mean, I'm considered white, but in Italy, in northern Italy, they call us Africans. And I do have the frizzy hair here and the olive complexion. And I have, so I was arrested in New York City for other, I was arrested during Occupy. I was arrested in front of ICE headquarters, and because I'm an immigrant, and also because you know, there are so many disabled immigrants.
But your book, your memoir,
Yes.
is not just about a disability rights leader. It's not just about a person who was visited by polio. It's also about a person, a woman who has an awful lot of experience with the healthcare system of Italy and the United States of America. A woman who has a great deal of experience with higher education, and a woman who has experience with a lot of things that unfortunately women in everywhere have experience with. That includes sexual harassment, sexual assault, self-doubt, suicidal ideation, guilt, all kinds of things are packed into your book. The discovery of sexuality, the discussion that you get into in the roughly 300 pages, pared down from over 400, you said, right?
400 manuscript,
So,
single spaced.
yes. So that was on its way to 600 pages. So what I'm trying to figure out is how you decided to go as deep as you went in this memoir. You can read a lot of memoirs, Nadina. There are memoirs everywhere. Everybody's writing memoirs, and some of them are about 1 inch deep. You know, they're very superficial. Yours is not. Yours is taller than me, and probably with me and you on my shoulders. So it's what you put in, what you chose to share with the world, and what you left out. How did you decide?
It's such a difficult process. I mean, at times, yeah, even now after it's been published, I question myself, should I have put that out there in the world, you know? I wanted to be honest as I possibly could. And I wanted to show who I am as a person. And I am all those things because no one is just disabled and that's it, you know. And those are, you know, because I am a feminist, it's a feminist book too. And because I'm an immigrant, it's the book of an immigrant, etc. And all those, yes, they all kind of, I mean, when I was writing this book, the word intersectionality had not even been thought of, I don't think, because I started writing a long time ago. But somehow everything intersects to make you who you are, you know. And yes, I was oppressed in different ways. Yes, you know, when I wanted to teach, that was questionable, you know, like what, why, how are you gonna, the stupid questions such as, how are you gonna write on the blackboard? Like, you know, to be a teacher, you absolutely have to write on the blackboard. And when you mentioned sexual assault and my first you know, that's how my sexuality, when I, a young woman, you know, young girl starts developing, that's what was happening to me. And this was happening in hospitals. And I didn't even recognize it as such, because I was so, one, I had been made to feel that I was not as good as a non-disabled girl at the time. And my body felt like it was common property. And it felt here are the doctors that are trying to fix me and cutting me up over and over. And strangers, always touching me and doing things to my body, so to the point where it didn't feel like it really belonged to me, this body. And there's one very, if I would find it quickly enough, I would read it, where I've just been, I don't know, it's better not, but where I have just been raped, really. An intern came in the middle of the night and got in bed with me. And I question it, is it, was it rape, or did I encourage him? I was flirting with him earlier. Am I a slut? Or is this free love? By the way, those were the years of free love, happy years. And I say, what claim do I have on this body after all, and it's, it took a long time for me to get over that, to come to a healthy kind of sexuality, because even after, of course, and I think I'm a graduate school, and I meet this young man who's from Rome, fall in love with him, and I thought he was in love with me too, and I describe the relationship a little bit, and and then he takes off. He goes back to Italy without even saying goodbye. And I say, well, yes, I was okay. It was okay. He's away from home, so it was okay for him to be with me, to have a disabled girlfriend, but he would never take me to his parents. He would not want to, and that's how it was then. And I have this. This I'm going back now with Audrey, where we talk about how men would be attracted to us and then feel like there was something wrong with them for being attracted to a disabled girl. And I put it in Audrey's mouth. She says, because I had just said, well, we're pretty, we know how to be sexy. And she said, but see, that's even worse, because that's, they're attracted to us, but they don't want to go past that.
Well, that incident with the intern was 1967. You were around 19 years old.
Yes.
And so the eras that you lived through, you were born in 48. You saw much of the 50s in Sicily. You come to the United States of America because your father, who is a builder, a fixer, a strong man, comes from a family that does not believe in idle hands. They believe in hard work. And he realizes that the healthcare system in Italy is not going to be able to cure you. And he believes maybe the doctors in America will have the tools to fix his daughter. And so you and I would not be talking to each other right now. You would not have written Such a Pretty Girl.
With my father.
No,
That's
if,
not
if polio had not visited your family,
Yes,
right? And certainly if your father hadn't thought the healthcare system in America could do something miraculous. But the word destiny is in your book quite a bit. And you and I, like I said, you and I would not be having this conversation right now if it had not been for what happened to you at age 16 months. And you've been around for a little more than 70 years. You look, when you write this book, you've got 70 years in the books. You have a long view backward. And I was just wondering if you have thought about your destiny and, you know, why it is you and I are having this conversation right now and why it is you wrote this book, how it is you became who you became, a person arrested over 50 times, a person who is very active with Not Dead Yet, with ADAPT, and with a number of organizations.
Disabled in Action, yes.
You were,
And the Disability Caucus, which my husband and I started to intersect with other groups that were, you know, oppressed groups. Destino, I mean, that was the word in Sicily growing up. I always heard the word destino. And Sicilians are known to be pretty fatalistic, you know. Who knows? You know, I mean, any of us could ask themselves those questions, you know, if certain choices were made for us, and if we didn't make certain choices, what our lives would be like. I don't know, you know.
what would your life have been?
What would it have been?
Had polio not come visiting?
I probably would be in Sicily with with a few children and all grown by now. I don't think my father would have taken me to the US. He really wanted to bring me here because of the polio. So I would be one of those Sicilian women that I, in the last chapter of the book, when I go back to Sicily, I meet some very nice Sicilian women, but here I am. You know, how much?
Well, you were awakened to Disability Nation.
Yes,
for sure. You
at the right time, you know, like I was here and I tried to ground the memoir in the history of the times. You know, I hear about, you know, when I'm still, I'm in the convalescent home actually, in the hospital. So I hear about the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King.
The 60s. Mm-hmm.
60s, yes. And then of course I go to demonstrations against the war in Vietnam. I'm a hippie, you know, I'm smoking pot, wearing long skirts to hide my legs, my ugly legs. So I that's something I really wanted to do, you know, and I, you know, did a lot of checking, fact checking to, if I wasn't, you know, because, you know, my memory at times, you know, failed me. and to know exactly when, you know, like I would remember that I went to this demonstration in Washington, D.C., and okay, what year was it? And then I go and look it up. You know, it was important to me to ground it, to make it so that, and those were such important years. So if I was younger, if I had come to if I'd come to the US when I was much older, let's say, things would not have been exactly the way they happen to be.
Giovanni got you here at a very good time. The 60s were a very interesting time to be in America, and you were in New York City as well.
I was in New York City all the time, and yes, they were very very exciting times, and I also believe that the movement, the way it is, you know, and the way it started, it would not have started if it wasn't for the civil rights movement, the women's movement, the gay rights movement. It was a time for movements. I always believe that there's never, you know, one person that starts a movement. Now they say they started a movement, they start movements with a hashtag on a Twitter, you know, me too. Mm-hmm. But again, you know, it's the same way. There's someone that may be the spark, but you have to have fertile ground, and you have to the people that want change have to be there, ready to organize. Otherwise, nothing is going to happen. And that's how the disability rights movement started. Well, on the West Coast with Ed Roberts, you know, and at the East Coast it was Judy Heumann, whose memoir came out recently. I was really so impressed when I read about this young woman who had the guts to rebel and sue the Board of Education when she was denied a license to teach. And then she went on to found Disabled in Action, an organization that I'm still active with.
You also became president of Disabled in Action, right?
I was, yes, secretary, president of the board through the years, you know. Yes, definitely.
Well, you mentioned a minute ago choice. You said choices we have, and you certainly are pro-choice, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And my body, my choice, right? And you had a very difficult choice to make relative to your legs when you were a young woman. What to do with your legs? They were painful, and you were falling down and breaking parts of your body all the time.
I was breaking mostly my knees, my ankles, because when I came here, I had surgery after surgery, you know, after my father brought me here, and they got me walking with braces and crutches. And after that, I started graduate school, and I started teaching as an assistant first, Italian, and I kept falling, yes, breaking my bone, my legs, and the decision that I had to make, you know, that was I was told that this was one way to keep walking and not give up and go to the wheelchair, you know, using a wheelchair was seen as, you know, giving up, because walking is so much more normal, I guess, than using a wheelchair.
And it was
And
something your father,
my father wanted me to walk. He brought me to America so I could walk. So it was this, and the decision that I make is to let the doctors amputate my legs at the knees, so that I can walk with prosthesis. It was a incredibly painful decision to make. I saw a therapist for many months, for about a year actually, to try and understand my motives. Now this was in 77, which was, by the way, around the same time when the 504 sit-in San Francisco.
yes, readers will not get an encyclopedic explanation of the movement, but you managed to put in things such as Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 without making it boring. You were able to talk about the Americans with Disability Act that was signed in 1990 and the struggles associated with both of those important pieces of legislation and regulation. You get that into your memoir very craftily, I think. But anyway, 504 is going on, the sit-ins that are going on from San Francisco all the way to Washington, D.C. and many cities across the country, including New York City. That's what you were talking about just now, Section 504?
Yes, yes.
So you're 29 years old and you're making a decision relative to your body. And this is when the sit-ins are going on.
And it's an incredibly difficult decision, and the chapter titled "Amputation" in the book is written in a way where I keep asking why. It's as if the nurse is asking me why are you doing this, but I'm really, asking myself, I could tell that the societal pressure and the pressure from my family, my father, had a lot to do with this decision, which I probably, had I been a young woman today, I would not make. In fact, I have online these little videos where I talk just about that. How did you lose your leg? It's titled the video, and yet the pull, there's this pull. The one I want to still walk. To make my father happy because of the pressure from society telling me, yes, of course you have to walk, and because of the breaking my legs, not having to take time from my studies, from teaching, and at the same time, this being in the movement where we've been talking about, we used to, in the beginning we had CR, consciousness raising groups, just a lot of us were feminists, so where we talked about accepting our bodies, accepting our disabilities, and so. My mentor, Frida Zames, a name that in New York City is very well known. She's gone. She passed away when she was still in her 70s, and had polio like me. Kept saying, so why don't you just use a wheelchair instead of having the surgery. And yet I make this decision, and it is very difficult till the very end. I mean, I do not regret it. There is nothing that I have done in my life that I regret. Any experiences, even the most negative, the most painful ones, I have no regrets, which is, which is good, because so many people do have regrets, who are not disabled necessarily. And I walked very well after the surgery. I was still with crutches because my muscles, my trunk muscles are not strong enough. But I did until I started getting post-polio symptoms, post-polio syndrome. And that's when I went to the wheelchair, and it was so liberating. In fact, right at the beginning, the first, it's the second chapter when I'm in the hospital. I get admitted at the hospital for special surgery, and they bring me a wheelchair, and I don't know if you remember that little.
Age 13.
I was 13 years old. For the very first time, I'm moving on my own. Nobody has to carry me or push me. So I always loved the wheelchair, really. And I say in that part of the book, that day in that long corridor, in this American hospital, to me it was the American hospital, I fell in love with the wheelchair. And yet, for so many years, I tried very, very hard to keep walking and not use the wheelchair.
Yeah.
So often in disability memoirs, try to simplify things. And instead, what I tried to do was show how the complexities, the ambivalence,
The conflicts.
the conflicts.
Yes. Well, look at, we could talk about Such a Pretty Girl for a long time. There's a lot to unpack in this book. And it has so many themes that are accessible and relatable, and will always, I suspect. There's issues of, body image, which is a big issue, I know, on the minds of many of my students. And there is
Takes me a long time to really accept my body. Yes.
But there are many themes, there are many things to unpack. Maybe we'll do it again sometime. I think that for the purposes of the Writers Institute, we've kept you quite a while, and we are so glad that you were able to come on. I just have one final question. And the picture on the cover, right? That's you at age 4 or 5 years old. There are so many pictures of you that we could have used. For instance, the last copy of Mouth Magazine is that.
Oh yes, so Lucy put me on the cover.
And the back cover.
I wanted that picture on
You
the
being
front.
Arrested.
Yes, I'm being
Okay, so are books, are they collaborative? Are they compromises? Why is that picture on the front as opposed to one of these you in battle pictures?
It was a last minute decision. My publisher really liked the picture of me as a little girl. When we started out, we had several covers, they were, and that picture of me getting arrested was always the cover. And I thought that was going to be the cover. But then at the last minute, I went along. I mean, it was fine with me. I mean, there was no argument, really. You went, by the way, when you signed the contract, you signed that the cover, that's good. That's the publisher's decision. So, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I wish they had the picture in the back was larger so you could see it. But there are pictures. There's a picture of me speaking at the Women's March.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't. Well, it's they wouldn't show well. I don't think so. But I can send the pictures, and I can with the descriptions. By the way, I wanted the pictures to be described in the book, but NYU Press. It was NYU Press really that decided that would take up too long. The book is already too many pages. But I think that our time is over.
Yeah.
Jim?
It's never over. It's just coming to an end for today. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for your memoir. We will see you again sometime, perhaps in Albany.
I hope so, because I was really disappointed. Hello, Paul. I see Paul now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Nadina and James, this was wonderful, a really insightful and wonderful conversation. Thank you very much. And we do hope to bring you to the Writers Institute in person one day. But thank you both very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'll hold you to it, Paul.
Okay.
Be well.